Unions and industry groups are at odds over proposed changes to English proficiency requirements for 457 visa applicants. A primary industry union is warning lowering the level of language fluency required for migrant skilled workers will result in increased numbers of work-related accidents. But a national industry group claims current requirements are so tough that talented overseas workers are being left out. They've put their case to an independent review of the temporary migration program, which is due to deliver its recommendations next month. Marina Freri reports.
Earlier this year, Assistant Minister for Immigration, Michaelia Kesh, launched a review of the 457 visa program, tasking the panel with assessing the integrity of the temporary migration scheme. In its submission to the review, the Australian industry group lamented that current English proficiency requirements for skilled workers are too high. It says the level of fluency currently required prevents employers from reaching a broader pool of talent. Group Director Tony Melville says the requirement should be significantly reduced.
Well, what happens is that under the 457 visa system, the people who are seeking those visas to come and work in skilled areas in Australia are required to go through what's called the IELTS system, that's the International English Language Testing System, and get a high level, which is a level 6 across the board. Now that's been raised from a previous level 4. So what that means is that people in things like in areas like the skilled trades and engineering trades in particular, these people who were able to get in on a lesser language requirement some years ago are now having to face these higher language tests, which really aren't necessary for the work that they do.
However, on its website, the Department of Immigration and Border Protection says 457 visa holders have to achieve a minimum IELTS score of 5 to demonstrate a sufficient standard of English. The department also says language testing may not be necessary if visa applicants have completed secondary education in English. Citizens of some English-speaking countries, namely Canada, New Zealand, the UK and the US, also qualify for a testing exemption. The Construction, Forestry, Mining and Energy Union says easing the current requirements will be dangerous and irresponsible. CFMEU Chief Executive Officer Michael O'Connor says if proficiency in English language is not adequately tested, workplace safety will be jeopardized. He has also accused the Australian industry group of trying to recruit overseas workers on lower than average wages.
They're just looking at a way to bring in, quite frankly, cheaper labour to be exploited in many cases. And what we're really concerned about is if you reduce the requirement of people being able to speak English in the workplace, that will have a vast increase in serious accidents and even fatalities. And we think employers, along with unions and the community, should always make sure that the workplace safety comes first. And we think this call by the big end of town, the big businesses, is very irresponsible.
But AAG's Tony Melville argues there's no direct correlation between workplace safety and English proficiency. He says safety instructions could also be provided in languages other than English.
There really is no connection between the two. If you look at Australian workplaces, you might find a half a dozen different languages in the workplace. And the workplace safety system in Australia is really designed to handle that. We're a migrant nation, and you might have people from many different countries that you have to make safe, all of them. So you'll have either different language warnings or you'll have signs to show people to be careful.
But the union's Michael O'Connor says this argument makes no sense. Mr. O'Connor claims tightening English proficiency testing has already resulted in improved safety outcomes for all workers.
Well, before there was a requirement to have a reasonable standard of English, there were 11 workers killed in the 3 years leading up to 2009. The previous government then made sure that English was a reasonable standard of English was a requirement, and since then, unfortunately, there's been one fatality, but certainly a reduction in the fatalities of 457 workers. Common sense will tell you, and I'm sure everybody would realise, that if you can't communicate with other workers, you increase the dangers of accidents happening. If you can't read safety procedures or safety signs because they're in English, you increase the chances of accidents happening.
The independent review of the 457 visa program is expected to deliver its recommendations to the Department of Immigration and Border Protection mid-year. Senator Kench says a number of submissions have touched on the issue of language proficiency. But she says the department will only make a decision once the panel undertaking the review provides its recommendations.
My understanding is in relation to the submissions or some of the submissions that have been provided, and a number of these submissions are available online, arguments have been put forward as to why there should be a lowering of the English language requirement. But as I said, this is an independent review being undertaken by a 4-member panel. The panel will report to me as the Assistant Minister at the end of June, so mid-year. At that time, I will consider the panel's recommendations.
Assistant Minister for Immigration Michaelia Cash ending that report by Marina Freri.